Hey guys, Jesse here, and today I'm going to be doing a short tutorial on how to remove nub marks. So removing nub marks, I believe, is an essential skill that any Gunpla modeler needs to learn, or any modeler in general really. Removing nub marks is sort of the first step into improving the look of your Gunpla, and I feel that without nub removal, you're kind of wasting a model, in my opinion. The least you can do is remove those nub marks. So I'm here to show you how to do that today. So I'm going to start off with the tools that you need. These are the essentials that you need to removing nub marks, and I'll go into some of the optional tools that you can get that can just make life a little easier. So of course you're going to need your nippers, right? So I don't use these, but I'll go into that in a second. But you'll need some sort of plastic nippers. I've seen people online remove nub marks or build an entire model just using a modeler's knife. That would drive me insane. Then you'll need sandpaper. This is a sand block, and I'll talk about that in a sec. But any sort of sandpaper, preferably a fine grit sandpaper. So the higher the grit, the finer it is. So you'll need a fine grit sandpaper. Those are the two most basic things you need to removing nub marks. So just going into nippers, these are just standard wire cutters, and this is probably the worst option, but if this is all you have, this is better than nothing. These just don't cut very well, but at least you get some precision in your cut. The next would be some of these very basic nippers. As you can see, there's little holes in there because I tried cutting something metal, and yeah, that's kind of what happened. These aren't meant to cut metal; they're meant to cut plastic. This is from the Tamiya Basic tool set, and these are really good nippers, really good beginner nippers. So these are also probably the cheapest for what you get. You get in a set of tools. So this is sort of your next step up. These are like dedicated nippers. These probably cost about the same as the whole set that this comes with just for these nippers. As you can see, these have holes too, but that was my girlfriend trying to cut something with that was metal. But in any case, most of these nippers will have something like this that tell you the max cut. In this case, it's 1.3 millimeters of copper wire. So anything beyond that will cause holes or cause stress and bending of the nipper end. But as you can see, the end of this is okay. So this is sort of your intermediate option. Then you get into like the more professional stuff. These are pretty much nippers dedicated to only cutting plastic, and more importantly like ABS and the kind of plastic that comes on Gunpla models. As you can see, they're very flat. These are meant to go against plastic parts and kind of shave off the end of a nub. These are the Gundam Planet ones. These cost me I think like 35 to 40 bucks. So they're pretty expensive. The top of the line ones I don't have. They're called God Hands, and those will those are the best of the best nippers. Now, if you're just starting out, you don't have to buy super professional nippers. You can get away with getting something like this or even the basic set. My recommendation would just start out with the basic set. It's what I used for years before getting something like this, and then eventually getting these. I only used this maybe for my first ever model, and I mean they were terrible. But anyways, I'm going to use these for the tutorial just because I feel like this is what most of you have. I'll use my professional ones just to show the difference, but I'll go ahead and start with these just so it's more in line with what you guys may have. So what I'll do is I need this piece, K22, and I'm going to start with this really dark plastic to show you the difference between cutting fixing a nub on darker plastic versus white, because I have a white piece that I'll be doing. The worst discoloration you're going to get on a plastic would probably be like green or reds, because they're very bright and they're very, I guess they're very noticeable. It's just what I've seen is green and red plastics tend to stress really bad, or they show up really bad. So what most people do is they press these nippers against the piece and cut. Now you don't want to do that, because what happens is what kind of separates all these nippers apart from each other is how sharp and how cleanly they cut the plastic. So what happens when you cut plastic is you're essentially squeezing it until it snaps. With the professional nippers, it just kind of cuts all the way through. With these, it kind of takes a while to get cutting. So what happens is you squeeze the plastic and all that stress runs throughout the runner into that center point of where you're cutting, and that's what causes that white discoloration. It's sort of like if you take like a piece of gum or an eraser and you pull it, you'll see the discoloration until it finally snaps, right? And if you pull it faster, there's less discoloration. So what happens here is these aren't, super professional. They're not sharpened so well that they cut all the way through. They're sort of pulling and pulling and pulling the plastic until it snaps. So what you want to do is cut and leave excess on the piece. So I'll do that again. You're leaving a lot of excess on the piece. So now I have this piece, and you can see that's a nub, that's a nub, and that's a nub. So now there's less of that runner for stress to run through. So what you can do now is I can start to cut. Oh, well, first, as you can see, there's the stress. There's that white on the end of that plastic. I can start to cut bit by bit that plastic away until I have just a bit of a nub left. So then what I can do is, what I like to do is have 2 sets of sandpaper. I like to use sanding blocks just because they're easier to hold on to, and they can kind of, if you press down, they can kind of warp and contour and fit to the contour of the piece. So what I do is I start with a lower grit sandpaper, which will grind it a little bit more and make it rougher, but this gets rid of more plastic. And what you're pretty much doing is you're grinding away that stress plastic until you get to because that stress only runs so deep, you'll eventually get to the same color as the plastic you're trying to match. So I'll go ahead and get it down to about that. As you can see, it's pretty rough. So I'll take my finer grit and smooth that out. Clean it up. As you can see, that nub mark is pretty much gone. You're gonna have some some scratches and stuff from the sandpaper you use, but when you matte coat it, you won't notice it. If you're not matte coating, you should, or top coating, I should say, but otherwise, it doesn't really matter. So here, I'll go ahead and remove this one with my professional ones. As you can see, I just press it up against the piece, and it's just so smooth that it leaves about the same sort of nub mark that you'd see here as if I were to go at it bit by bit. So again, take my lower grit sandpaper, get that to about there. You don't want to grind too much because you might misshapen the piece by grinding it too much. But yeah, that's about it that goes into removing a nub mark. It's very easy. So now here we have this one. An optional tool I was talking about are these, just a hobby knife. And what some people like to do, and please, for the love of God, cut away from you. Do not cut towards you. Trust me. some people like to do is press against that and then shave away plastic this way. But I hate that. I'm just going to stop that right there because that's just, it's so time consuming. But you do get a little finer control. So if there's just a bit of plastic left on that piece, sorry, I got to take this off camera for a second. There's just a bit of plastic left on that piece and you can't get it with the sandpaper. Putting that knife up against the piece and pushing it and cutting off that piece of plastic might be a good option. Yeah, this is all I do to remove nub marks. So there you go. So as you can see, no more discoloration in your plastic. It's a little roughed up from the sandpaper, but again, if you're top coating, all this stuff won't be noticeable. So there you go. So let's move on to the white piece. So I need C1 here. Now, a nice thing about white or nubs are very, very, I mean, it's white stress going through white plastic, so you won't notice a thing most of the time. So what I like to do for these is get my nippers here, my professional ones, push them against the piece and cut. Now again, you don't want to do this with the cheaper nippers because that stress will run closer to the piece itself. As you can see, I still have a nub there. I'll just take sandpaper there. Find those nub marks. Nub marks on the edge of pieces are very, very easy to clean up because you can kind of go at it at the angle of the edge. So you can kind of, this nub is against this sort of, I'll call it like a cliff, right? And you can press it against it at an angle, kind of go at it, smooth it all out. Yeah, white nub marks, they're the easiest to take care of just because, again, it's white stress going through white plastic. Again, if you use cheaper nippers or less sharp nippers against a darker piece and you push it against the piece and cut, the stress will be closer to the piece, so that means that white discoloration will be deeper in the piece, so to speak. So even if you do sand it, you're going to have like a white dot or something. But there you go. So those two pieces cleaned up. So that's all I do for nub marks. Other tools you could probably use for nub marks trapped in maybe like very tight crevices or whatever is a file like this. This came with the Tamiya basic tool set. This works too. It's a little rough in my opinion. I mean, it's just, and it's metal, so it can really tear up your piece. But if you can squeeze a piece of sandpaper in there, it's probably a better idea. But yeah, that's all that goes into removing nub marks. Just take the piece off with a lot of excess, shave it down bit by bit until you kind of notice that discoloration disappearing. And once you get close enough to the piece, just go at it with a rough sandpaper and then a finer grit sandpaper until it's smooth. Well, that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.